What is up, everybody? Welcome in to the Run Pure Sports NBA/NFL Showdown, talking a now 5-game NBA slate plus Steelers and Browns on the Showdown NFL slate tonight. Joined today by Zach and Bobby. Zach, how you doing, man?
Good. It's nice. It's my first time on a show with you, DC. So nice finally getting on, talking some sports. It's been nice watching football this whole weekend. I love Wildcard weekend, little NBA mix in it. So excited to talk both sports and hopefully get some winners for the people.
Absolutely. How you doing, Bobby?
Doing good. Last night you got me with the Trae Young. I wish I listened to you. wish I was listening to you there, but you had me. Cost me some dough, but ready to get back into this today.
Yeah, of course. Always jumping back into the next slate. We had a little disagreement on Trae Young. I was talking about the Charlotte Hornets pick and roll defense, which they shut them down 2 games in a row. So something to pay attention to with Charlotte going forward. Looks like they might be pretty good against pick and roll heavy point guards. As I mentioned, we're talking NBA DFS. We'll break down both DraftKings and FanDuel plays. We'll go game by game for the next 45 minutes or so, and then we'll jump into 15, 20-minute maybe discussion on the NFL Showdown slate while we watch Saints and Bears here. Please like our video, hit subscribe in the bottom right corner. This is a free video. Of course, we have all kinds of content up on the site at runpuresports.com. We've got our core plays in there. The NBA team has been on fire. It's been a really, really strong start for all of us, for everyone on the team. And hoping to pick some more winners. So we're going to try to keep this ball rolling. Before we get started, I should say, if you just made a lineup and then checked out for the rest of the day for NBA while you're watching football, the Boston Celtics and Miami Heat game has been canceled. Obviously, Jason Tatum, did he test positive? I'm not sure, but regardless,
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so Tatum's going to be out, I think, 10 to 14 days at minimum. But then, they lost the guys that were like, the contact stuff, right? So Jaylen Brown, a bunch of other guys were already ruled out. And then it seems like maybe they got down to under the required 8 players. So it was looking like, I was looking at playing, 5 or 6 Boston Celtics maybe in my lineup. So that game is off the table, which the slate was pretty easy, I thought, with that game on it. Now it becomes much more difficult. What are your thoughts overall on the Boston situation? I guess you don't have to talk too much about that. It is what it is. And then just the slate in general, Zach.
Yeah, so it changed the whole slate because, as you said, Boston was going to be extremely popular. We were going to jam in 4 to 5 of them in every lineup, and you're going to be playing some 2v2s for the rest. So I'm actually happy because now it changes the whole slate, makes it different. People that are just watching football and not looking at NBA are going to be flustered when they see it and stuff. So I'm perfectly fine with the news, makes it less chalky. Another big news was Kyrie is out. So KD gets the big bump, other people there. So I think it's a fun 5-game slate on a Sunday with a lot of edge involved with that people watching NFL. So I like it. Yeah.
Overall thoughts on the slate, Bobby?
Yeah, same thing. Like everyone's going to be watching NFL. I think you kind of leverage that. Obviously the Boston news, it's difficult. I think there's going to be more, like LaMarcus Aldridge, I kind of would be skeptical about him playing now, or did we get him ruled in like officially?
We don't. DeMar DeRozan ruled out. I haven't seen.
DeMar DeRozan was the one who was ruled out. Okay, so I figured one of them were going to sit.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, on a back-to-back with Minnesota there. I'm really high on the Spurs. Looking at your core plays title, it seems like you are kind of in the same direction. But we'll get to that game when we get there. We'll start out with the 2 early games. There are 2 games that lock in 40 minutes at 6 Eastern time. Those 2 games, OKC in Brooklyn and Denver and the New York Knicks. Just in terms of what Vegas kind of expects from those games, Denver 5.5-point favorites going into New York. You got a 213 total, by far the lowest total of the 5 games that are left. And then the Brooklyn Nets are pretty big favorites, 7.5-point favorites at home here. Of course, Kyrie Irving ruled out. We're going to see what we think will be a lot of Kevin Durant returning from he didn't have COVID. I think he just had a contact tracing situation. 224 total there. Let's start with OKC and Brooklyn. I think you're going to see Kevin Durant end up being one of the more popular plays on the slate. Obviously, we've seen Caris LeVert go off in these last couple of games with Kyrie, Durant, and Dinwiddie all out. LeVert going to play here. Durant going to play here. I expect most of the offense to run through those two guys. How are you guys breaking this down? Bobby, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so for me, like Kevin Durant's way too cheap for the usage rate. So I feel like we're definitely going to Durant. Also, like just looking at OKC, we'll just stick with the Nets. I don't mind, like Horford's obviously always had like defensive inefficiencies. So I don't mind going to like a Jared Allen or a DeAndre Jordan. I think those guys are interesting, just on a shorter slate, kind of differentiate construction. On the OKC side, kind of like George Hill and Shea. I don't know. Title, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, so I think Horford on FanDuel sticks out as too cheap. He's only 5,200 at a center position that we now lost Taco Fall at. So he's definitely in play if you want to get the KDs of the world and pay up. So, yeah, KD obviously probably one of the best plays of the slate. He's not too priced up. Just one of the best players in the world now without Kyrie in a matchup that I'm not worried about at all. So absolutely a great play. SGA 7,600 on FanDuel, 8,000 on DraftKings. He's just the guy in OKC now without CP3 there, Adams there. He just has the ball in his hand all the time. He's actually became I've never been a big SGA person, but he seemed to take a lot of strides from this year to last year. His confidence, he's getting to the rim, getting fouled. So he's definitely in play. One of the higher totals of the day, too, should be an up and down matchup. So I like that. And then the other guy, Caris LeVert on DraftKings, 7,900, though. His price has came up. If you're doing the mid-tier build, I think it'll be pretty contrarian to go LeVert since he is so high, but he obviously has a ceiling. So I like that. And then George Hill on FanDuel, 4,600 point guard spot. So I don't expect anyone to play him. But now that we don't have this Boston value, 4,600 feels like value for a guy that's going to be starting and can put up points. So it's a good game, but there's only a couple options that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm with you guys in general. I'm not really trying to get too fancy on this one. Obviously, Kevin Durant, a fantastic play. There's some expensive players that I really like in the Denver and New York game. So it's going to be, you can't get all the super studs. So it'll be a close call for me. I think just for ownership reasons, maybe I might go with Randall over Durant because I do anticipate Durant at least double Randall's ownership would be
probably more, to be honest.
Yeah, at least double, I think, and maybe 3 times. I could see Durant 40% compared to Randall's 10%, something like that. Yeah. So that's a pivot that you can make. Obviously, we'll talk about that game in a moment. I think LeVert's still in play. His price is up, and obviously Durant being in there, kind of takes away some of his usage, but I still think we're going to see a lot of LeVert. I think we'll see their, Steve Nash stagger their minutes. I think LeVert will get plenty of time running the offense by himself. Durant coming off a 3 or 4 game layoff with the health and safety protocols. I'm not really worried about that at all. I think he'll be just fine, good to go. He's looked phenomenal early on, and we know, Kevin Durant's just not a selfish player, but when he needs to carry the load, he's certainly capable of it, right? So I think you'll see him. It's hard to imagine he kind of doesn't go off in this game. So very high on Kevin Durant. You can't go wrong there. And certainly if you can fit him in your lineup, go ahead and do so. The rest of the Nets, Jared Allen, it's a good matchup for him. I like targeting bigs against this OKC team. You don't know exactly how many minutes he's going to get. I think him and Jordan, yes, Jared Allen, especially now that he's starting, he's going to continue to get the majority of those minutes. But Jordan's still going to be in there. Any interest in a guy like Jared Allen, Zach?
So I've been playing a lot of Jared Allen, but his price just keeps rising, and now it's at 6,700. He's just not a Kyrie being out doesn't benefit him too much because he's just not an iso ball player or anything like that. When he gets there, it's offensive putbacks, it's blocks, rebounds, all that. So I don't have too much interest. I think it's priced a little too high for me on this slate. And they did, last game they showed they were fine going to DeAndre Jordan for the whole third quarter pretty much. Allen had a great first quarter, and then he only came back with 3 minutes and 50 seconds left in the second or something because Jordan was playing well and Nash was fine just leaving him out there. So a little too high for the price, but makes for a good tournament play because he always has upside.
Yeah, I'm looking a little bit at DeAndre Jordan just as the last guy in, 3,900. I think this is a kind of a fluid situation between him and Jarrett Allen where, like you said, if Jarrett Allen is struggling, DeAndre Jordan comes in, plays well, maybe he'll get 26 minutes compared to, Allen's 22. I think they're just basically going to split those 48 center minutes in some way, depending on who's playing well. Bobby, any last thoughts on this game before we move on?
I think we might have lost Bobby. I think his camera died, computer died, or some battery issue. So I think it might just be me. And
he's got that brand new camera. So yeah, maybe we'll get Bobby back in here. But until then, we'll keep moving. Let's go to then the other early game of the night, Denver and New York. As I mentioned, a lower total in this one, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to be off of it. Denver not playing at a very fast pace. However, their defense does leave something to be desired. I've been all over both Nikola Jokic and Julius Randle, the two kind of big stars in this game. Pretty much every slate. I mean, we've seen Randle's price tag rise. I think he started around maybe 7K. I think he hit 9,800 in his last game. He's back down to 9,500 here. Got some foul trouble last game. Still solid. Jokic coming off Denver here on a back-to-back. They played in Philly last night. So obviously not a big travel day or anything like that. They did win that game rather handily. Jokic played just 29 minutes. For me, Denver is mostly a pretty simple way to attack them. It's either kind of Jokic or nothing. Jamal Murray, the other guy that I do think has a significant amount of upside. And New York, man, I'm not backing off of Julius Randle. I mentioned him when we were talking about Kevin Durant. I think Randle's a good pivot. We think he's going to be much lower owned. I think he just has the same upside. We've seen Randle put up 60-plus fantasy points time and time again this year. He would have done the last game again if he didn't get in foul trouble. So I'm interested in your opinion, Zach, on the matchup with Jokic and Paul Millsap, because Paul Millsap, a good defender by name, but I don't know how much he really has left to kind of slow down Julius Randle. So what are your opinions on Randle? Because for me, kind of a big decision is whether to eat that Kevin Durant chalk or go a little bit contrarian with my guy, Julius.
Yeah, so for me, I'm more of a cash player. Where you're more of a tournament player, Big T, and all that. So I have a hard time making the pivot, and that's probably just me being chalkitis and all that. I just love Kevin Durant in
cash. I think it's fair to say Durant over Randle.
And tournaments, and it for sure makes as a pivot because you get a little bit of discount too. But Julius Randle, I mean, this is his team. He commands all the usage on the offensive end. Thibodeau's running out his starters 35-plus minutes a game, which you always want. The matchup is a little concerning, I think, because, the low total scares me a little bit. If they slow him down on offense, make it a half-court game, Randle needs to hit those mid-range jumpers and stuff. But so it's not the most ideal matchup, but I think the ownership will reflect that too. So it makes sense. 9,500. I think he's a better play on DraftKings. Where on FanDuel he's 9,400, but it takes up one of your two power forward spots, and then you really hard to get Durant and other pieces. So I'd leave it to DraftKings only. This game I don't have too much interest in though. Outside of Alfred Payton's price tag stands out on FanDuel. He's only 5,500. Gets some steals too, good defender, so he fits the scoring over there. And without this Boston on a 5-game slate, that screams value. So he makes sense over there too. But I'll be off this game majority as a cash player, and then maybe Bobby has some interest too.
Yeah, Thibodeau, I was a Minnesota season ticket holder for a few years there when Thibodeau was a coach. Like, he just runs his players, his starters, his stars into the ground. I mean, like, the over-under on Randle's minutes each and every night is like 39 and a half, right? He's going 40-plus unless he gets in foul trouble or there's a blowout, basically. So I love that. I love the guys that you can just super reliable minutes and usage. So I do kind of like the Randle Jokic stack, because if this game, stays close, both of these guys, I think, could possibly approach 40-plus minutes maybe for Randle. You mentioned Alfred Payton. I think he's interesting. The other guy that I'm looking at a little bit is RJ Barrett, another guy he played 44 minutes last game. Like, he's just going to be out there the entire game. He hasn't shot the ball well this season, but the usage is there. And I think this game is, despite the low total, I've got some interest here for tournaments because I think you know where all the minutes and production are going to go if it does stay close. You can get maybe 120 minutes out of Jokic, Randall, and RJ Barrett, and most of the production as well. So I do like this game perhaps a little bit more than the field will. Bobby, thoughts on Denver and New York here?
Yeah, nice to be back. Yeah, I don't mind. You guys hit on Randall, hit on Jokic. I don't mind, like, just to differentiate your construction and GVPs, maybe playing a Jamal Murray or Will Barton. I think those guys are interesting. But like DC kind of hit on, it is a lower total. There's other options that we can kind of get to later on in the slate. So it's not something I'm forcing. DC, you hit on Elf Payton. I don't mind Elf. Tibbs' minutes are just through the roof. He's going to run guys into the ground. So I don't hate that. Maybe some Mitch Rob. Maybe it's a Mitch Rob game to deal with Jokic also. And JaMychal Green's another guy. He's always in these, like, he's, I don't know what his price tag is on DK. I want to pull it up quick. He's obviously cheap, but
yeah, 4,300.
4,300. Like, he may be someone we could have interest in. He's like a fantasy point per minute guy. So
yeah, I think just generally in this Denver New York game with a lower total, I'm certainly more than willing to play the stars, Jokic and Randall. But the peripheral pieces here, this doesn't seem like the game you really want to target. Both these teams relatively healthy. So play the stars if you want. I'll be doing that myself, but the peripheral pieces don't look super great. We'll move on to the 7 Eastern time game. So we have an hour break between these first 2 games, and then the next game, which is the Lakers and the Houston Rockets. I should mention, if you want our core plays, they're up on runpuresports.com right now. If you're watching the show as a non-member, that's use the promo code workbench21. That will get you 25% off your first payment. That gives you everything on the site. $20 extra if you want the betting side, but all the DFS content, core plays, my article out every day, exclusive live shows leading you up to NBA Lock, just a ton of good stuff over at runpuresports.com. So hit that, hit that subscribe if you want to. Workbench21 again for 25% off your first payment. All right, let's keep it moving to the Lakers and the Houston Rockets. Kind of an interesting game here. I'm looking at my site has this one off the board. Is there news that has just come down? Not seeing any. It looks like Anthony Davis going to play. Not seeing anything surprising as of yet. Rockets, Lakers. I think all the stars are likely to be in here. LeBron, Anthony Davis, Wall, Harden, Christian Wood, I think are all expected to play. Zach, what are you seeing between the Lakers and the Rockets?
Yeah, so this is another game where I don't have too much interest. I think it'll be more defensive. I don't think that's why this Nets game just stands out so much, because I expect the pace on both sides to be pushed. Don't expect it too much. The prices are right on both sides, it seems. The best value that stands out to me is Dennis Schroeder on FanDuel. He's only 5,100. He got moved to point guard eligible, so he makes a lot of sense over there. And then DraftKings, like the guys I'm most interested in is LeBron and Anthony Davis, but they're both priced accordingly. I'd rather go Kevin Durant in a vacuum over both of them. Sounds like you'd prefer Julius Randle as the pivot to Anthony Davis or LeBron. So
sure.
that just doesn't leave us with too many pieces in this game. For me, I think I just make a 5-game slate and turn it into a 4-game slate.
I'm pretty much the same way. Certainly nobody, in this Lakers Rockets game is, as of now, unless we get some news that we're not expecting really that close to making my main lineups. As you kind of make your main lineups, you're clicking around a little bit and trying different combinations, and there's no one in from this game even like entering, you know what I mean? Like in and out. It's just not there for me yet. So maybe I'm missing something with the Lakers and the Rockets, but assuming all the stars play as we expect, I just don't see much meat on the bone in this one. Bobby, do you see anything differently from me and Zach?
Yeah, the other night, I watched AD they just seem, Big T hit on it on one of the weekday shows. They just seem disinterested, the Lakers stars. Maybe they get up for this Harden game, but I don't know. I would hope Daniel House was ruled out. And it's funny because Harden's usage has actually gone down within the 12 games that House has been out. So I just find that interesting. It's just because probably Wall's taking up some usage and Wood as well. So Yeah, I think Title kind of hit on it. Like I like Dennis Schroeder. If I had to pick anyone, it'd be Dennis Schroeder on FanDuel, and I don't mind him on DK as well. He'd be the one guy.
Yeah, it's weird with Harden. Like, I don't know why they keep pairing him with like another ball dominant guard. It seems like the last thing, it was CP3 and then it's Westbrook and then it's John Wall. It's like kind of seems like the last player Harden needs alongside him. And we've seen just over the last few seasons, when Harden plays without the other guy, whether that's been CP3, Westbrook, or now John Wall, he becomes the best play on the slate, basically. Anytime he's kind of the only ball handler left. And then when those guys are playing, he's usually priced a little bit too high, right? The usage just isn't quite there. He's always one of, if not the most expensive players on the slate. So yeah, I'm not really on Harden and John Wall here. I think I'd play Anthony Davis over LeBron if I had to choose between the two. He's a little bit cheaper on DraftKings. Also, Houston, not very good on the boards. This would make sense to some extent for Anthony Davis to have a huge game. But again, I do prefer guys like Kevin Durant, Nikola Jokic, Julius Randle if you're spending all the way up. So I don't see myself ending up on either of the Lakers stars. Sounds like you guys are the same way. I don't mind the Dennis Schroeder call. I bet he'll be out there for a good portion of the game going up against, some pretty shaky defense, I think, from the Rockets. So, yeah, I don't think, Zach, any final thoughts here? It seems like you're mostly just off this one.
Yeah, mostly off it.
Cool. Yeah, we got another hour between the Lakers and Houston game going to Minnesota. The Spurs and the Timberwolves will play. They played last night too, right? So they're going to play 2 games in a row here in Minnesota. We do have some significant news from the Spurs side, actually from both sides of the ball. DeMar DeRozan going to sit this game out. Looks like he, so far, is the only guy rolled out for Spurs that I've seen. Personal reasons for him. And then Karl-Anthony Towns, he did return from that wrist dislocation last game, but he's going to be out here, which does open up some minutes in the front court for Minnesota. Also, obviously, Towns a pretty high usage player. Some of that usage can be spread around to other players. Bobby, we'll go to you first on this one. For me, Spurs and Minnesota looks like a pretty juicy game, especially from the Spurs side of it with DeRozan out. What are you seeing here, Bobby?
Yeah, so I was kind of anticipating on a back-to-back, either one of the Spurs stars being ruled out and then Towns being ruled out. They played double overtime last night. That was the game to play last night, DC. And it ended up being the game. I told you. Had to be on that game.
I hear you.
But yeah, so for me, like Lonnie Walker, I think stands out. DeJounte Murray, I wonder, like, if this game blows out, is he someone like I really want to play? That's why I don't mind Devin Vassell. I think Mangone has him on the cash sheet, little peek behind the paywall there. Yeah, I don't mind. Like, DeRozan's obviously going to see a ton of usage. He's going to be the play you really want. But in large field GPPs, maybe this game blows out. You can get to – I just want to see guys that kind of play blowout run. Vanderbilt, I don't hate. Malik Beasley, D'Angelo Russell. Those are guys that Malik Beasley and D'Angelo Russell are just gonna, if the game blew out, I wouldn't want any equity to them. But Vandy would be someone I'd be pretty interested in Lonnie Walker and Vassell. How about you, Title?
Yeah, so this game definitely stands out a ton. That's why I don't have too much interest in the Lakers game. Don't have too much interest in the Nuggets game. Expect this one to be back and forth, up and down the court. So DeJounte Murray stands out right away on both sides. I just think his price is too low for his ceiling. 6,600 on FanDuel, 6,800 on DraftKings. He has triple-double upside to 60 point. The guy's really, really good, commanding the ball a lot more. I think Jakob Poeltl on both sites, 3,600 on DraftKings, 3,900 on FanDuel. This is just now where we lose all the Celtics value and there isn't too much value to be had. And Jakob Poeltl, when he's in, he produces. So you need the value now. It's definitely not as good as the Celtics value, but it gets you the Kevin Durant's and different builds if you want that way. Malik Beasley, both sides, just playing almost 40 minutes a game, shooting the ball pretty well. Just expect him to get run out a ton of minutes. Lonnie Walker, the same, falls in that same category, too cheap. Even Patty Mills, he's 4,100 on FanDuel, 4,800 on DraftKings. So I do like him more on FanDuel, but even on DraftKings, when he gets hot, I mean, we saw it a couple days ago, he just couldn't miss, and he can break the slate at lower ownership too. So tons of pieces in this game. I didn't even mention Rudy Gay and Keldon Johnson too, but both firmly in play on FanDuel, both in play on DraftKings too. Like, this game just has so much goodness, and it'll be popular though, but it's hard to get away on a 5-game slate.
So I just want to pick your brain. Like, so last night we thought this game was going to blow out. It stayed close. They won a double overtime. If this game blows out tonight, that's pretty much like where my interest would lie, because so many people in tournaments are going to be targeting that. Well, just in general, the ownership here is going to be so high. So I wonder if it does blow out on the back-to-back, maybe one of these teams lays down. It's not back and forth. Like, who are the guys we can target in that scenario? That would kind of be, it's kind of how I'm thinking about it from a tournament perspective. Just wanted to, like, I really like Vanderbilt. You hit on Patty Mills. Keldon Johnson, rookie, like, he's probably going to see more minutes in the blood. He'd probably still see minutes. Like, I'm just trying to think of different ways to kind of approach it if everyone's going to be kind of basically, if the ownership's going to be concentrated.
Yeah, I think, if it did blow out, Jared Vanderbilt, the guy, us guys that run Pure Sports, we were on him. I recommended him pretty strongly 2 games ago against Portland. He put up 29.5 fantasy points, I think at 3,800. He's at 4,100 today. I feel much more comfortable with him with Karl Anthony Towns sitting. He's a guy that I feel almost certain would be out there in the event of a blowout either way. I think he'll probably get about 20 minutes in most scenarios, but possibly upside for more. I really, really like Patty Mills here, specifically on FanDuel at 4,100. I like him at DraftKings at 4,800 too. I mean, he's, at 23 fantasy points per game on the year. I believe this is the first game that DeRozan has missed, at least that I can recall. I think he's going to take on a decent amount of that usage. The numbers don't really back it up, but just knowing DeRozan's role in this team and what Patty Mills does makes a lot of sense. Yesterday I was off of Trae Young because of the Charlotte just dominant pick and roll defense. Minnesota's the opposite. They're the worst pick and roll defending team in the entire NBA. That's a big part of Patty Mills' game, and I think we're going to see a lot of that from him. So I like Mills. I like Murray. Rudy Gay, as you guys mentioned, I think he's in play. Lonnie Walker, I expect to be out there for 30-plus minutes. There's Aldridge. Aldridge is actually probably my 5th favorite Spur, which maybe that's a little bit of a hot take, but I just kind of think he is a little bit on the way out, obviously on the downside of his career. I just don't see
he makes more sense, I'll say, on FanDuel at 6,500 when you have to roster 2 power forwards, but I'm with you. Like,
he just doesn't make me excited, right? It just like, you're praying for 35 with him. And I don't know if he's ever really like going to go off. So,
and especially in a blowout, he'll be the first one to get pulled on a back-to-back in a blowout scenario. So definitely makes sense.
I think he played like 33 minutes last night, which doesn't sound like the end of the world.
That's a lot for him.
Yeah, exactly. So DeJounte Murray, I think he played 41 last night. That makes me a little bit nervous because he has been a guy that the Spurs have kind of monitored his minutes in the past. Not so much this year, but I think he could still play 35, but would I be shocked if he only played 29? No. I think some of those minutes could be picked up by Patty Mills and Rudy Gay. I really like Rudy Gay on FanDuel at 4,600. I think he's a decent play at 5,300 on DK. Only played 16 minutes last night, but typically gets, into the mid-20s. I would expect mid-20s or maybe even getting closer to 30 in this one, considering he was the guy that didn't really get a lot of run. And then you've got DeMar DeRozan out. Rudy Gay can obviously do a little bit of everything. So a lot of good options on the Spurs side. And right now my main DraftKings lineup has 4 Spurs in it. Murray, Mills, Gay, and Lonnie Walker all making my main team. We'll see if that holds, if we get any new news or anything like that. But yeah, I think you got to get pieces from the Spurs. This Timberwolves team just horrific defensively. You got a 229 total and a 3.5 spread here. So it should be a very, very strong game to target. Minnesota side, I mentioned Jared Vanderbilt. I think he's a pretty good punt play, 4,100 on DraftKings. I think some people might try Naz Reid. I've kind of lost faith in him a little bit. So Vanderbilt is my preferred big. Zach, you've got D'Angelo Russell, I think, has upside. Like you mentioned, Beasley is a strong play. If you had to rank the Timberwolves, where would you start?
Yeah, so point per dollar, Beasley is my favorite. Just like just think he's too cheap for his role. He playing a ton of minutes, shoots the ball really well. Then my number 2, I would say, is Jarrett Culver, actually, on DraftKings too. Only 4K. This is another guy we're talking about. If we think blowout that's going to get run at the end, I mean, they invested a lot in Jarrett Culver. They expected a lot more out of him than he's performed. So getting him on the court, seeing him minutes, I think he for sure gets blowout run. And even if it's not, he's going to see minutes. So I think he has a good ceiling for his price as well. Yeah. I'm more on those two guys on this Minnesota side, whereas I'm on the Spurs more. And then I like taking the higher price guys from like the Nets game and stuff like that. So just mainly the Culver and Beasley.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Bobby, any final thoughts between Spurs and Timberwolves before we move on?
Yeah, Zach hit on Culver. Culver's coming out in a lot of optimals.
He's crushed me a couple times this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I'm a little worried about Culver. That shooting stroke. He sometimes he can't hit the broad side of a line. So I don't know if he's going to be a little chalky.
Maybe. No, he's not going to be chalky. People are going to be
okay.
I don't think so.
I'm just running stuff right now, and I just keep seeing him coming up. So.
I think people are going to be like, "No, I can't keep going to that."
Tough. It seems like a tough path. I don't know. But I'd be wary of Culver. That was the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, I prefer Vanderbilt to Culver. I do get the Culver play. Obviously, I've been on him. I think he's got some upside, right? Like I do think he's clearly got 30 fantasy point upside. The floor is pretty low, but if you're playing tournaments, I think he'll be pretty low owned considering this is, just a 5-game slate and a couple of the games, especially Houston and the Lakers, you don't really like. So obviously ownership will be relatively high for most players, but I do think you'll get Culver relative to the field pretty low owned. That's pretty much it for San Antonio, Minnesota. Of course, all of these games we will come back and readdress if we do see any news that kind of changes our opinion on the game or any of the players. Next game of the night would be Miami and Boston, but as I mentioned to start the show, that game is postponed due to all the Boston Celtics COVID problems. Hopefully they'll be back in action soon, but no Miami-Boston game tonight. Make sure you get those guys out of your lineups if you had them in there, and probably you did. If you built a lineup earlier, I think I had to click out 5 or 6 Boston guys from my own lineup. So again, the Heat and Celtics will not play tonight. That leaves us just one more game. They'll start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So pretty quick, short slate tonight, to be honest. Toronto and Golden State. This one should be high scoring. Certainly two teams that like to play at a high pace. Golden State, I believe, way up there in pace. Toronto, one of the people don't really consider them this, but one of the highest transition teams, biggest transition teams in the entire NBA. 233 total, which is the biggest total on this slate. Raptors are 3-point favorites. Not much here in terms of news and notes. Kyle Lowry did miss last game. Fred VanVleet went off for 50 fantasy points, but he'll return. I think it was just a personal issue. We are still waiting on Andrew Wiggins, who is questionable. I don't really have a read on whether or not he might play. Zach, we'll throw it to you. What are you seeing between the Raptors and the Warriors here?
Yeah, so right away, anytime Golden State's on the slate, Steph stands out in the game. First one we got to talk about, and his prices came up. He's 10 flat on FanDuel, 10.1 on DraftKings, but it's still too cheap for this guy's role. Steve Kerr's playing him where he's playing him the whole first quarter and the whole third quarter. So even if they're down big in the fourth or up big in the fourth, he won't get that blowout run, but at least he already got about 30 minutes or a little less to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If they're blowing him out, he already had something to do with it to already get there. So he's got that sneaky value with the floor. I think he makes a lot of sense on both sides in a good game environment, like you mentioned. Draymond Green on FanDuel is only 5,100. I'm not a big Draymond Green guy, especially in DFS, but he gets rebounds, he gets some steals, gets some blocks, which suits better on FanDuel. Power forward position's bad, so he definitely makes some sense. On DraftKings, Siakam at 7,800 feels too cheap as well. In the mid-tier build, if you're not getting the Kevin Durant, you don't like the value, I think he makes a lot of sense there. Kelly Oubre, he's 5,000 on DraftKings, 5,300 on FanDuel. and he has built-in upside with Wiggins. If he's rolled out, I think he'd be one of the biggest beneficiaries there. So even if he's not out, Oubre, we've seen what he does in the past. Hasn't had the best start to the year, but he's active on the glass, active hands, and can get some points too. So makes a lot of sense in this high tempo game. The only other guy I think I'll mention is OG Anunoby, just because I think he goes overlooked with the big stars out there. 5,800 on FanDuel, 5,700 on DraftKings. And these are one of the games where he flourishes too, when it's a transition game up and down the court, athletic guy. He can turn steals into dunks, run out in transition and stuff. So he makes a lot of sense in this game. I think it's clear that this game, the last game we just talked about, and the Nets game are the three top games on the slate, and we'll get the most ownership. And that's where like the Randalls, the Jokic's, and then the Lakers game. If you want those studs today, they'll be lower owned today. So that's a great tournament route if you like that.
Yeah, I think this game will be overall lower owned than the Nets game and the Spurs. And Timberwolves, just because there's no injury news, right? People love to flock when the Spurs have DeRozan out. Rightfully so. I mean, it makes sense that people do that, but I do think you'll get somewhat lower ownership on this game. Steph Curry, like you mentioned, just a phenomenal play. The return of Draymond Green not doing a ton of hardly any scoring. I think his season high field goal attempts was like 4, but he's unlocked Steph Curry, right? He understands what Steph needs to do to get off. And so, yeah, I think Steph Curry makes for a phenomenal play. I do like Oubre if Wiggins sits. Less interest if Wiggins plays, but either way, I think you could play him. Obviously, he hasn't shot the ball well, but they kind of need him to get going. So I do think at some point we'll see Oubre start to play well. Draymond, man, I just don't know if I can roster someone that's shooting 3 or 4 times a game every game, but I do. He makes more
sense on FanDuel though, because he's cheaper, and then the steals and blocks means more. But I'm with you, and that's more of a cash game thing to unlock you everything. Like I doubt he's winning you a GPPs right now in his state.
Yeah. I think Draymond's a better play if Wiggins and Oubre sit, because Draymond's like usage has gone down significantly. Since he's been back, and I think it has to do a lot with Wiggins and Oubre.
So yeah, Wiggins. If Wiggins is out, then yeah, I didn't even mention he probably gets a bump there
Draymond
too.
Gets a bigger bump, I would say. We should hit on Chris Boucher. AP just DM me in Discord. I'm happy I was reminded too, because the other day I was talking to my buddy prior to lock, and we always like go back and forth. And we didn't talk that one day, and Boucher went off, and we were trying to hit that Raptor game. Or that's what, like, we usually talk about the Raptors, and he was basically telling me we didn't hit out. Neither of us played Boucher, so good to get that reminder. I like him at 5,900, 1.38 fantasy points per minute. Maybe he sees a bump here, like Siakam, like Curry. I think those are like core plays for me. This game, I like this game a ton. Like I think we're all pretty much on it. This game could be the game that gets you over the top. So.
Yeah, Boucher basically, the Raptors' last game, he basically stole. Did Alex Len get hurt in that game?
Alex Len led. I think this was the night Alex Len took the 0 and someone won the 888 for like $300K.
Yeah, so Len started that game. He only played like the first roughly 5 minutes, and then Boucher came in for him. Boucher also started the second half.
They have to eventually get Boucher more minutes, though. That's what I like. He's a good player. Like
I wouldn't be shocked to see Boucher start this game. I think that's in play, given that he started the second half of the Raptors' last game. So if Boucher gets in there, I think he's 5,900 on DraftKings. He becomes a really interesting play. At that point, you're a potential game stack here in this one. I think could work out. I mean, obviously you got Lowry and Van Vliet. You know what to expect from them. Siakam, Boucher, OG Anunoby is in play, and then on the Warriors side, especially if Wiggins sits, you're looking at Curry, Oubre, Draymond Green. Wiseman is not a bad play. Like, there are a number of places you can go in this game. So I like this game more as kind of a total game stack. Maybe you get, a 130, 125 game. You get a couple blowouts in the few games on the slate that aren't this one, and suddenly you can kind of get that PMR and rise to the top at the end of the tournament, which is a fun way to go. So, yeah, there's nothing in this game right now that stands out to me as a must play. but more so just like a ton of good plays, right? A ton of places you can go. I'm still on guys like Jokic and Randall over Curry, but Curry, I think, is a guy that you're going to want to roster a lot of going forward, just without Klay Thompson, without Kevin Durant, just, the current makeup of the Warriors. You're going to see a lot of Steph Curry, and that will only go up, in my opinion, if Andrew Wiggins does sit this one out. Zach, final thoughts on the Warriors and the Raptors. VanVleet, Lowry, you have a preference there. I'm not really considering those guys for a cash type build, an optimal type build, but I do think both guys in this matchup make for pretty good tournament plays.
Yeah, so between those two, my answer is always VanVleet. I just think he's the better basketball player all around. I just like VanVleet's game all around, but I think they'll both go overlooked as well a lot. Siakam will be the Toronto guy if people play him because he's 7,800. Just feels a little safer for if he gets a double-double, rebounds. He just feels more active and safe for cash games. So I think VanVleet and Lowry go very, very low owned, and I lean VanVleet. And he didn't even get a lot of fourth quarter run last game too. So it's not like they ran him into the ground and you have to be cautious about that. So I think he's good to go, and he makes for a good tournament play.
Yeah, that makes sense. Bobby, any final thoughts on this one?
All the Steph, baby. All the Steph.
Yeah, I like it. I've got no annoying pick and roll stats to bring to you to get off Steph Curry. I'm with you. I think he's a very, very strong play. That's all 5 games on this slate. We don't really have, monitoring news here, injury news. Nothing really has come up in the 45 minutes that we've been on air so far. We are going to talk about the Steelers and Browns game for NFL Showdown. And then, if we get any news between, while we're talking about that, right, we've got these 2 games locking in 3 minutes. That's OKC and Brooklyn. That's Denver and New York. So those are going to lock. If we get news on later games while we're talking about football, we'll go revisit any scenarios that we need to do so. But for now, that will kind of wrap up this NBA slate. So let's jump over then to the NFL slate. As I mentioned, Steelers, Browns tonight for showdown, big showdown, obviously, with the NFL playoffs. I'll start myself. I'm very, very high on this Pittsburgh passing game. Obviously, they have pretty much no running game whatsoever. You can pass on the Browns. Good weather, relatively speaking, in Pittsburgh tonight. And I think the Steelers kind of found something. Second half of their Week 16 game against the Colts, they were down 21-7.5. They did a bunch of up-tempo, no huddle. It sounded like Big Ben kind of took over, almost like play calling, audibles at the line of scrimmage, and they went absolutely off. From what I've read, they feel pretty confident here. So that's the approach that I kind of took to this whole Sunday, was the Steelers passing attack, and certainly not going to waver off of that, in a one-game type scenario. So I'm very, very high on the Pittsburgh passing attack as kind of my main mode of attacking this one. Bobby, what are you seeing between the Steelers and the Browns here?
Yeah, so we were DMing this morning. You posted in Discord. That's why Discord is great, guys. If you're a member, just make sure to be getting in Discord. Draftcheat posted basically that there was an article about Ben taking over the offense. They're running more pace up, more 2-minute. We've obviously seen that change, and I reached out to him. I had seen that. I'd heard that on the telecast, so I liked hearing that. And then there's some good props behind this Pittsburgh passing offense. Like Ben Roethlisberger over 1.5 TDs is like minus 220 or like something like that, or was this morning. I haven't pulled up right now. Deontay Johnson's props are way, like very, very high. He's a great play. Mangone hit those props in Discord last night. Just if you were looking to put some cold hard cash down on that act, he was on it on top of it. I got a bet in there on Deontay Johnson over 6.5 catches, just because of him posting that for that matter. So yeah, so I'm bullish on the Pittsburgh passing game. Like running it back little Nick Chubb. How about you, Title? Where are you going? How do you see it playing out?
So I think we get a low scoring game. I think it's 2 divisional rivals. I'm not as high on Pittsburgh. I haven't been all year. I even made a tweet against the Bengals that they might have been the worst 10-2 team I've ever in the history of football. And they just don't have a running game. Now people think that James Conner is going to be chalk. I mean, he was going to be popular in the Sunday slate and all that. Like, I think that's like people were playing him over like AJ Brown for a little more and stuff like that. And I always say playoff football, like the big guys come to play. Obviously Derrick Henry didn't, but DK Metcalf yesterday, Michael Thomas right now. The big guys want the football in prime time. So the only guy really I'm on is Deontay Johnson for the passing game, just a big time football player that makes plays. And then Claypool. So I think those two are the Pittsburgh offense. Claypool, I'm just buying in on. He's just a freak of nature, great talent. I think they play him a lot more. His snaps were trending downward for whatever reason toward the end of the year. They were trying to get James Washington more involved, which I get. He's a good deep threat and stuff like that. But I think Tomlin knows Chase Claypool's got to be on the field. Best chance to win the game. So him and Deontay, I like making a stance on overweight and then being underweight on Connor and Juju because I don't think it's a very high scoring game. And then on the Cleveland side, I'm not as high on the running backs in this situation either. I like more so the Austin Hoopers, Higgins, who's cheap, just because I expect it to be a short passing, the run stops, Pittsburgh stops to run, even Cleveland stops to run. So it's a lower scoring game, but they keep trying to establish it like all coaches do for some reason. It's worth noting too, Cleveland's coach, Stefanski, very good football coach too. Obviously he can't be there. So who knows what the play calling is going to do. I think the Browns are going to try and run it, take the clock out of it, and win a low scoring game against the Steelers team. So you always got to pick a game script on these games for showdown. Mine's going to be a lower scoring game with Deontay and Claypool getting the touches on Pittsburgh, and then the short passing game with Hooper, Jarvis, and Higgins on the Cleveland side.
Yeah, that's basically the way I'm approaching it. I don't really have a strong preference on the Steelers receivers. I think Deontay, Juju, and Claypool are all strong plays. I actually think, weirdly, Claypool might have the most upside, a long touchdown upside. I think he could, go off for 120 and 2 touchdowns. He's just that type of athlete. Deontay, obviously, kind of the short area guy, and Juju a little bit intermediate. It seems like they're doing right now. But I do have faith in this Pittsburgh passing attack. I'm fading James Conner, like you mentioned, Zach. I think they're going to throw the ball all over the field against the Browns. And, if I'm on the Pittsburgh passing attack, I'm going to mostly go run backs with the Browns pass catchers, like you mentioned, Hooper, Landry, and Higgins, the 3 guys that I'm really looking at. I do expect Chubb and Hunt to continue to kind of split those snaps and carries to some extent. Maybe they go to Hunt, now that they're in the playoffs, but they've had big games for a while, and it's pretty much always a 50-50 split down the middle in terms of snaps for those guys. So, yeah, I'm on the passing attacks here. We'll see, obviously, a divisional game. Sometimes these can be, a little bit of a slugfest, grind it out in the trenches, but I do think this one, decent chance that both offenses air it out a little bit, perhaps more than the Browns want to, but hopefully the Steelers can kind of force them into that. Just a reminder, guys, please like and subscribe to this video. We've got plenty of free content up here on YouTube and, of course, over at Run Pure Sports. Content every day, NBA, NFL, every single DFS sport, betting, anything you can want. We've got a partnership with Monkey Knife Fight. They will match your deposit if you're a first-time depositor up to $50. Use promo code RUNPURE to get that. Tweet us a screenshot if you went on Monkey Knife Fight. Use hashtag RPSMKF, and we'll pick 2 winners for free swag t-shirts from Run Pure Sports. I don't have a ton more to say really for the Browns and the Steelers. I think the Steelers DST could be in play if Baker's forced to throw a lot. I could see that going south for him in a hurry. Bobby, any final thoughts on Browns and Steelers before we kind of wrap this up and go watch the second half of Saints and Bears?
Yeah, so just one thing standing out, I think a lot of people are going to be on Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins. Someone in Showdown that I think is interesting is Kadrell Hodge. He played 42% of the snaps last week.
Yeah, good punt there.
On Showdown for tonight's slate on DK. I think he has a pretty good rapport with Baker. I know Peoples-Jones is the guy that pretty much everyone kind of knows about, but prior to Peoples-Jones becoming relevant, Hodge was the guy that Baker that was leaning on. And then Hodge went down with COVID or whatever, and Peoples-Jones basically, I still think Peoples-Jones is a good play in Showdown as well, but I think Hodge is kind of sneaky, and I don't think he's going to be too high owned at all. So I think he's someone, if you're trying to be differentiate your lineup in Showdown, he's someone you can go to.
For sure. Yeah. Especially if you're kind of going with the Steelers passing game and you need, just some cheap run backs. He does seem like a good way to go. Checking briefly over any NBA news, still really nothing. Seems like we might be pretty much done with news for the night. So hopefully you guys got those NBA lineups locked in. Obviously, those first two games starting up here in a few minutes. And then it sounds like all of us are pretty high on the Spurs Minnesota game, specifically the Spurs side of the ball, if you're trying to fill out those final spots in your lineup. Just a reminder, please make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, hit the like, hit the subscribe. We're here, pretty much every day dropping.
Hodges out. Okay. Yeah. Hodges out. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
COVID, it sounds like from the chat that he might be out with COVID. So
that's Peoples Jones would be.
And more tight ends than Joku. I mean, the Browns will run out 2-3 tight end sets all game. That's their MO.
Yeah, with Hodge out, I don't think it changes a ton, but yeah, you can look a little bit more toward the tight ends perhaps. And then Peoples Jones, assuming he's in there, could see him. He's at least got some upside. He's got some good athletic ability. So yeah, that's Pittsburgh and Browns tonight. Should be a good one there. And then that's the NBA slate as well. So yeah, if you are so inclined, please head over to Run for Your Sports. Use promo code Workbench21 for 25% off your first payment. I think you guys will like what you see. Just tons of good content. Of course, our Discord talking all sports all the time. Just a ton of knowledgeable guys in there, not only from content providers on the site, but also just the members of the site just do a phenomenal job breaking down each and every sport. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I believe our next shows will come for NBA tomorrow, kind of our regularly scheduled programming, couple hours, NBA 1 with free, and then, of course, leading up to lock with JSU, who just had a huge win last week in NBA. That'll do it for us. Thank you to Zach and Bobby for joining me today. Thanks you to everyone for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with more content on the channel. Make sure to like and subscribe, and good luck in all your contests tonight.
Good luck, everybody.
Contest. Oh, sorry. You got there.